As Russian and regime airstrikes continue to pound rebel-held neighborhoods of Aleppo, Syria, Bashar al-Assad says retaking the city is key to pushing back terrorists. In an interview with a Russian newspaper, Assad also claimed that Turkey's actions in Syria violate the country's sovereignty.
If we start from today, it's invasion.
This
incursion is invasion, whether a small part or a large part of the Syrian territory is invasion against international law, against the moral, against the sovereignty of Syria.
Meanwhile, at least 20 people have been killed in a car bombing north of Aleppo, close to the Turkish border. The attack happened at an opposition checkpoint near the town of Assads. The UK-based Syrian Observatory for Human Rights says most of the victims were the members of a moderate rebel group. Dozens of people were also injured. Let's get the very latest and speak to Ediz Tiyansan, who is live for us in Gaziantep near the Turkish-Syrian border. Ediz, let's start with Assad's comments in that interview. Specifically what he said about Turkey, and how has Turkey reacted to those comments?
Well, with regards to comments on Turkey, so far we don't have an official reaction. We don't know if there will be one, but Assad claims this is an invasion. He's referring to the Operation Euphrates Shield, that this is an invasion that violates international law and Syria's sovereignty. But what we do know from earlier statements coming from Turkish officials, that Turkey's presence there, just across the border in northern Syria, is not permanent. They've emphasized repeatedly that this is a temporary operation that they had to carry out for their own national security. As you know, for many years before this operation, Turkey's been subject to cross-border rocket fire by Daesh forces who had been holding on to that area for a long time. There's been more than 20 casualties because of this rocket fire, and there was also growing criticism and annoyance by Turkish population living there. And ultimately, when they started this operation, they also made it clear that they will only advance for about 40 to 45 kilometers just to cover the range that could be used for rocket fire to target Turkey. So they are also not looking forward to advancing deep down more south inside the country. Now, with regards to other comments on Aleppo, though, we've seen Assad say, and I quote, "Taking the city of Aleppo from rebel forces would be a springboard for Syria's army to push the terrorists back to Turkey." That's where he claims they came from. But this has been a rhetoric that was used by the Syrian regime since the beginning of the civil war. Assad calls all of the opposition fighters terrorists, claiming that all of them came from neighboring countries. But we do have clarifications as recent as last week from the United Nations. The Special Envoy Staffan de Mistura said that the moderate opposition fighters, these are native Syrians, and their numbers are about 8,000 to 9,000 in Aleppo, as opposed to only 900 former Nusra Front members that are currently called Jabhat Fatah al-Sham. And those are the only ones that have some form of Al-Qaeda links, let's say, to the outside world. And under the premise of fighting groups like these ones, the Assad regime, along with the backing from Russian Air Force, they've been bombarding in the entire eastern part of Aleppo intensively, especially in the last couple of weeks. Now, the death toll just from this week has reached 150, and almost all of them are civilians.
And what more can you tell us about this explosion in Assads, again in the north of the country near Turkey?
Well, it took place overnight on Thursday, and we understand this took place near the city of Assads, just in northern Syria. As you said, this is very close to the Turkish border, to the Bab el-Salam crossing, and it targeted specifically a checkpoint controlled by the Free Syrian Army fighters. We understand the blast was so powerful it could actually be felt from just across the border on the Turkish side, and the number number of casualties are at least 20 at this point, but among the at least 25 injured, 8 of them were in critical condition and they were taken to hospitals across the borders. Now, this is an area that is used by the Free Syrian Army soldiers as they advance in their ground offensive as part of the Operation Euphrates Shield. And remember, as they keep moving on, as more areas get liberated from Daesh, we understand that life is finally coming back to normal for the civilians living there. And for Jarablus being the first town liberated by FSA fighters, it's been now close to 50 days, and they're gradually setting up their own local council, eventually to get back onto their own feet.